Very good morning, my dear students. Myself, Dr. Yatish Kumar Joshi, PhD scholar in JNMC Varda. Today, we will be continuing with the fifth and the last module for first BDS, that is Cadaver as our first teacher. I am doing this under the supervision of Dr. Sunita Vaga Madam, Head of the Department of Pathology, JNMC Varda. In today's session, we will be addressing the following contents. What is a cadaver? History, early use of cadavers in medical education. Why are cadavers used in medical education? Preserving the body for medical training. Good practice for cadaver use. Alternatives to cadavers. And lastly, reflections and conclusions. So, let's begin. What is a cadaver? I am sure all of you might have worked in anatomy department on a dead body or a corpse that is called as a cadaver. In Latin, the word cader means to fall. The cadaver is someone who has fallen, someone who has died. So it is called as a cadaver. So let's look into the history of use of cadavers. It all started in 3rd century ancient Greece with two physicians by the name of Herophilus of Chalcedon and Erasistrus of Chios. They practiced the dissection of cadavers in Alexandria, and it was a dominant means of learning anatomy. After their death, the practice ceased and was revived in 12th century and gained popularity in 17th century and practiced ever since. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II in 1231 stated that a human body will be dissected once every 5 years for anatomical studies, and attendance was required for all who are training to or currently practicing medicine or surgery. Legal sources of cadaver was the corpses of criminals who were executed, usually by hanging, but family felt it was demeaning and society also did not think it as an honorable task. As demand increased for cadavers from universities across the world, people began grave robbing. These corpses were transported and put on sale for local anatomy professors to take back to their students. This led to a riot in New York, mostly referred to the Resurrection Riot of 1788. This led to many legal adjustments such as the Anatomy Act put forward by the US government. These acts opened up other avenues to obtain corpses for scientific purposes, with Massachusetts being the first to do so. In 1830 and 1833, they allowed unclaimed bodies to be used for dissection. Although dissection became increasingly accepted throughout the years, it was still very much disapproved by American public in the beginning of 20th century. The disapproval mostly came from religious objections and dissection being associated with unclaimed bodies and therefore a mark of poverty. There were many people that attempted to display dissection in a positive light. For example, 200 prominent New York physicians publicly said they would donate their body after their death. Currently, body donation isn't surrounded by stigma, but can be considered as celebrated. Body donation has not only led to scientific advancement and discoveries, it also has led to lives being saved. So, as you can see, the historic aspect of dissection is not very easy. Many peoples have faced hurdles and challenges to study and learn anatomy and bring it to us as we study it today. So let's see into the early use of cadavers in the medical education. The study and teaching of anatomy through the ages would not have been possible without sketches and detailed drawings of the discoveries when working with human corpus. Da Vinci, as you all might know him, Leonardo da Vinci, the famous artist, he has done a lot of work in anatomy, in the drawings of anatomy and dissections. You will be seeing that in the further slides. Da Vinci collaborated with Andreas Vesalius, who also worked with many young artists to illustrate Vesalius' book, The Human Corpus Fabrica. And this launched the use of labeling anatomical features to better describe them. Leonardo da Vinci studied and practiced on as an apprentice under Andrea del Verrocchio in 1466 and mastered the art of 3D drawing of human structures, bones, muscles, and tendons. He later collaborated with many physicians like Marcantonio della Torre and others. Through his studies, Da Vinci was perhaps the first to accurately draw the natural position of the human fetus in the womb via cadavers of late mothers and her unborn child. It is speculated that he conducted approximately 30 dissections total. His work with cadavers allowed him to portray the first drawing of umbilical cord, uterus, cervix, and vagina, and ultimately disputes beliefs that the uterus had multiple chambers in the case of multiple births. It is reported that between 1504 and 1507, he experimented with the brain of an ox by injecting a tube into the ventricular cavity, injecting hot wax and scraping off the brain, leaving a cast of the ventricles. Da Vinci's efforts proved to be very helpful in the study of brain ventricular system. As you can see, these are few of the drawings done by Da Vinci and other artists of the 17th century. You can notice the precise precision about the muscles, tendons, skeletal structures, the uterus, as well as the position of the fetus in the uterus. So, Da Vinci gained an understanding of what was happening mechanically under the skin to better portray the body through art. For example, he removed the facial skin of a cadaver to more closely observe and draw the detailed muscles that move the lip to obtain a holistic understanding of the system. He also conducted a thorough study of the foot and ankle that continues to be consistent with the current clinical theories and practices. His work with the shoulder also mirrors a modern understanding of its movement and functions, utilizing a mechanical description likening it to ropes and pulleys. He also was one of the first to study neuroanatomy and made great advances regarding the understanding of anatomy of eyes, optic nerve, and the spine. But unfortunately, his later discovered notes were disorganized and difficult to decipher due to his practice of reverse script writing, mirror writing. Why are cadavers used in medical education? So now we have seen in early era how the doctors and artists together combined and collaborated to study anatomy and record their knowledge. Now we will see why do we need to use these cadavers in medical education. I am sure that all of you might have done anatomy dissection in first class, and believe me, that is the first time that you hold a human body, you hold a scalpel, and when you start cutting into the body, you get the feel of the scalpel, you get the feel of the pressure that you need to apply onto the skin to bury the scalpel in the skin and gain a cut. So this experience cannot be done without studying on the cadavers. There are several reasons why human cadaver training is considered the gold standard in medical education. Learning is solidified by hands-on experience. Nomenclature and discussions are necessary, but there is nothing that can replace hands-on learning, especially for surgeons and healthcare professionals using medical techniques and devices. The cadaver lab is an active learning environment in which learning comes full circle. Every human body is different. This is intellectually understood, but they also need to be experiential teaching that allows medical personnels the opportunity to observe human tissue up close and personal. Human may share basic anatomy, but the appearance and responsiveness that differ from one to another. the more familiar physicians are with the nuisance of human tissues, the better their clinical practice can be. First-hand encounters with the diseases are vital to patient care. Cadaver training affords us the ability to observe a wide variety of pathologies such as tumor formations in addition to normal anatomy. Appreciation. Students of human cadaver lab often express that one of the most compelling takeaway of training in is the appreciation they gained for donation to medical community. Regardless of innovation in virtual reality, sentiments from students confirm that the future of healthcare relies on the comprehensive understanding of human body in its true form. So now we have seen why we should use the cadavers. We will now see how the cadavers are actually used. So how do they preserve the body for medical training? So before we see the preservation method, I would like to briefly tell you about actually what happens after death. How the body actually goes under decomposition. So it is under three stages. The three stages, the first is autolysis or self-digestion, during which the body cells are destroyed through the action of their own digestive enzymes. As a result of autolysis, liquid is created that seeps between the layers of skin, results in peeling of the skin. During this stage, flies, when present, begin to lay eggs in the openings of the body, eyes, nostrils, mouth, ear, open wounds, and other orifices. Hatched larvae, maggots of blown flies subsequently get under the skin and begin to consume the body. Second stage is the stage of bloating. Bloating, bacteria in the gut begin to break down the tissue of the body, releasing gases that accumulate in intestine, which becomes trapped because of the early collapse of small intestine. This bloating occurs largely in abdomen and sometimes in mouth, tongue and genitals. This usually happens around the second week of decomposition. Gas accumulates and the bloating will continue until the body is decomposed sufficiently for the gas to escape. And the last stage is the stage of putrefaction. It is the final and the longest stage. Putrefaction is where the largest structure of the body break down and tissues liquefy. The digestive organs, brain and lungs are the first to disintegrate. Under normal conditions, the organs are unidentifiable after 3 weeks. The muscles may be eaten by bacteria or devoured by animals. Eventually, sometimes after several years, all that remains is the skeleton. In acid-rich soil, the skeleton will eventually dissolve into the base chemicals. So this is this process of decomposition. So if the body decomposes or even if the first stage of decomposition has begun, then it cannot be used for cadaver dissection because the structures will be unidentifiable. Hence, we need to preserve the body for medical training. So the preserving of the body for medical training is basically done by embalming with fluids. Embalming is the practice via infusion of chemical fluids. It has been used since centuries. Prevent the body from decomposing, help the tissues retain their color and softness, prevent both biological and environmental hazards, and preserve the anatomical structures in their natural form. This is accomplished with a variety of chemical substances that can be separated generally into groups by their purposes. So they are disinfectants and they are used to kill any potential microbes which are going to decompose the body. Then they are preservatives. Preservatives are used to halt the action of decomposing organisms, deprive these organisms of nutrition and alter chemical structure of the body to prevent decomposition. Then there are various modifying agents which are used to maintain the moisture, pH and osmotic properties of the tissues along with anticoagulants to keep blood from clotting within the cardiovascular system. Other chemicals may also be used to keep the tissues from carrying displeasing odor or particularly unnatural color. Typical embalming chemical includes formaldehyde, phenol, methanol, and glycerin. These fluids are combined in varying ratios depending on the sources, but are generally also mixed with a large amount of water. So you can see this is embalming. The second method is plastination. Gunther Verheugens invented plastination at Heidelberg University in Heidelberg, Germany in 1977. This method of cadaver preservation involves the replacement of fluid and soluble lipids in a body with plastics. The resulting preserved body are called as plastinates. Whole body plastination begins with much the same method as traditional embalming. A mixture of embalming fluids and water are pumped through the cadaver via arterial injections. After this step is completed, the anatomist may choose to dissect the part of the body to expose particular anatomical structure of the for study. After any desired dissection is completed, the cadaver is submerged into acetone. Acetone draws the moisture and soluble fats from the body and flows in to replace them. The cadaver is then placed in the bath of plastic or resin for practitioner's choice and kept known and step known as forced impregnation begins. The bath generates a vacuum that causes acetone to vaporize, drawing the plastic or resin into the cells as it leaves. Once it is done, the cadaver is positioned, the plastic inside is cured, and the specimen is ready to use. So the advantage and disadvantage of plastinates are that plastinates are advantageous in study of anatomy as they provide durable, non-toxic specimens that are easy to store. However, they still have not truly gained ground against the traditional embalmed cadaver. Plastinated cadaver are not accessible for some institutions. Some educators believe the experience gained during embalmed cadaver dissection is more valuable, and some simply do not have the resources to acquire the use of plastinates. So, usually the embalmed cadavers are for single use and they cannot be stored for a longer time, whereas the plastinates, because they are stored and modified into a plastinate, it can be stored for a longer duration for observation of upcoming batches for much more time. So next, now I would like to put some light upon the good practices that we should have for cadaver use. First, cadaver embalming and dissection. Before cadaver embalming, we should encourage the embalmer to answer yes to the following points. That means it is important to notice all these points. First, is the body obtained through body donation with attached valid consent form? Is the body free from any wound and congenital anomalies? Have you checked for the age of the body being injected? Are cadavers placed in anatomical position? Hair and jewelry on any part of the body removed? Are all cadaver embalming tables well cleaned and cadaver storage and or refrigerator well secured? So after all these points are answerable as yes, that means you have obtained the consent, the body is donated, it is free from wounds and congenital anomalies, and the age is known and the cadaver anatomic position, hair, jewelries all have been removed and the embalming table or storage or refrigerators are prepared, only then you should proceed with the procedure of embalming. So after embalming, you go for dissection. So before placing any surgical blade on cadaver, every anatomy instructor or student should actively exercise the following points. I confess that body in front of me is purely my teacher, so that I will start dissecting it to get full anatomical architecture and end in operating and healing my patients only for students. This point. That is, the students are going to learn from the body. They should be thankful to the body that it is sacrificed to teach them. I confess to treat the body in front of me a lifelike and handle all its parts with utmost respect. I confess to always request that the body in front of me is obtained through body donation with full consent from the donor. I confess not to exercise any unethical or ethical malpractice in dissection room, like damaging sense organ, tearing of anatomic structure, throwing away any cadaveric material, and uncovering the entire region that I am not dissecting. I confess to place the cadaver in an anatomic position, return all the instruments and cover it with after completing the dissection session. I confess to repeat all the above steps of all anatomic dissection session. So basically all students should keep all these points in mind, that it's our teacher, we need to handle it like a lifelike human. We should respect the body. We should handle all its part with care and respect, and we should make sure that the body is donated with proper consent. We should not do any unethical malpractices or damage the body or tear the body, and we should only uncover the area which we are going to dissect. We should also return the body to the anatomic position and all the instrument after the session, and cover the body after our dissection is complete. And all this should be followed in all the sessions. Next is cadaver transportation. Cadaver transportation includes the way of transportation of the dead body from hospital to morgue, and from cadaver procuring university to cadaver receiving sister university. The former takes a long journey of transporting cadavers under consistent ethical treatment. While transporting cadaver home, anatomic teaching, the body should be placed in anatomic position, well covered by body bag and packed in a wooden box, and should only be transported by ambulance service. No donating institution should receive money, or also no receiving institution should pay for the body being transported and used for advanced sciences. Next is disposal of cadavers. The final disposition of cadaver should pass through ethical network and be handled with utmost respect. No cadaver or its parts should be thrown away and burnt. It should be primary responsibility of ethics committee and body donation organization about the burial and disposal of body of descent. The body should be overseen regularly and traced sensibly. The body donation organization should take recognition, legitimate interest in the provision of burial services. Cadaver memorial ceremony. This is a very important part. The author proposes that preparing of memorial ceremonies for the body as one of the unique ethical practices. We should encourage, promote, and exercise memorial ceremonies in honoring of donors to recognize moral, ethical values and feel more connected to the patients. Therefore, ceremonies for honoring of donors should be prepared as the end of each semester in the presence of students, medical and postgraduate, and all staff members of anatomy departments and units. So now that we have seen the good practices that we should keep in mind while we do the anatomic dissection of cadaver and handling of theatre, now I would like to bring light upon few alternatives to cadavers. Synthetic cadavers are a unique type of medical model, provides an remarkable human alternative to working with preserved corpses. One type of this human model built to train surgeon and first responder is this synthetic cadaver. It even mimics what happens in the body during surgery or trauma, presenting the biological functions in a living person in distress, such as fluctuating respiration, body pressure, and heartbeat. So, this is a synthetic alternative to cadaver. Second is a virtual dissection table. It brings the future of gross anatomy and clinical science education to schools of health professionals. Swiping the screen, student peeled back layer of the cadaver, revealing pink organs and muscles, blue veins, and finally the skeleton. To find the appendix, just tap on the scalpel iron and then slice away muscles and tissues with fingers, exposing small organs. Remember, this gadget is a complement, not a replacement of the school's real cadaver lab, because the real cadaver gives students a tactile sense of the body. Students holding the organ will feel its weight and size in the way they cannot see on the screen. So these things cannot replace cadaver dissections, but they can be an alternative to improve your knowledge and intelligence. So in the end, we will see some reflections and then go for conclusions. So in reflections, I have collected this from an article. The study done in India also showed that anatomists should ignore their interest of using unclaimed bodies due to the alarming use of unclaimed bodies of poor and psychiatric patients. There is a scarcity of cadaver procurement but high demand of cadaver for dissection, learning and research purposes. Due to this, any unclaimed body without any consent and no report of patient's part history or documentation on cause of death was being transported to an anatomic laboratory from hospital to morgue. This is an awful, unethical and complete human right violation. There should be a legal way of body procurement, treating the dead with respectful attitude towards the dead human body is required and increasing awareness of voluntary gift of one's body, which is a morally preferable way. Respectful treatment of the cadaver during dissection to show final respect towards the body remains. The use of unclaimed body as a source of cadaver placed medical schools in opposition to receive mainly the bodies of poor people who have no family or relative to bury them. And this may show an inequality of the rights of bodies of poor and rich. This means the bodies of the rich are dignified and receive burial, while the bodies of the poor are retained in custody for maneuver like cutting and tearing in the name of advancement of sciences. A study done by Gunderman explained that unethical sourcing of human bodies may not only affect the respect and dignity to be offered for the dead, but also impose negative emotional and moral impact on the goal of the training medical students with a good moral infliction. As cadaver provided stimulation for an intense and personal reflection of the meaning of embodiment and morality. So remember this, the body that we are using for cadaver dissection is either a donated body or an unidentified body, treated with respect. So in conclusion, I would like to say that mother is child's first teacher in his life. Similarly, a cadaver is the first teacher of every medical and dental student. Remember the love, care, respect, and dignity we offer to our mother while handling the cadaver in anatomic practical session. Because knowledge and intellect is a gift from our teacher for which we should be indebted to them for life. So with this, I would like to thank you all for attending carefully. If you have any queries, you all have my number. You can contact me or you can mail me at orthoyatishjoshi@gmail.com or my number is 9860636690.